Okay, folks, we're going to start on chapter 21, immune system. Let's jump right in here. So if you understand the immune response, it'll help you assess your patients. That is our goal here as medical professionals. So as usual, we're going to start with a little video and then we'll move on. Oops, let's try playing the video. That would be good. Okay, let's move on here. So your immune system has innate and adaptive defenses. Innate means these are things that are in the immune system. These are things the immune system does kind of automatically. All right. Adaptive ones are defenses that take longer to mount, but they tend to be more specific, instead of just a general, oh, I attack anything that doesn't belong. These are defenses that are specific to invaders, things like that. Anyway, moving on. So the immune system, when we talk about it as a system, it's not a bunch of organs like an organ system. It's functions that different organs and different systems have together. Both innate and adaptive recognize some of the same defensive molecules. The difference is innate ones do have some specific pathways for certain substances. That's some, but the adaptive tend to have more. Anyway, innate responses, they're going to release proteins that will activate the adaptive ones. Wake them up and say, hey, we're having trouble. We need this backup. All right, so here is a quick little overview. Figure 21.1, definitely know it. How do you know you need to know it? How about I uploaded a screenshot of this directly into your Moodle class shell from the last time we did this class. So it's important. There will be questions based on this, and especially adaptive defenses, the humoral immunity, the B cells. I want you to know that memory B cells, those are like the stem cells that remember the infection. They're also memory T cells, but the memory B cells are the ones that will produce plasma cells, which are antibody factories. So super important. But before we get to those adaptive things, let's go through the innate defenses. And you can see there, it was on a previous slide too, but there are physical barriers like the skin, the mucous membranes, and then there are, if you're invading bacteria or whatever gets past those, then we have phagocytes, cells that eat invaders. That's things like neutrophils or macrophages. Then we have natural killer cells. Those are cells that will, among other things, tell uh, they will signal cells in your body like you've been taken over. Don't make the problem worse. You have to die. You have to get rid of it, and they will kill themselves in response to what the natural killer cells say. Anyway, inflammation. We're gonna know all the different sequence. Yeah, we'll do sequences too. But what I meant to say is all the different symptoms for inflammation. And antimicrobial proteins. I really like the complement proteins. They're very cool, but we'll get into that. And the purpose of fever. The short version is when you have a fever, your body is trying to raise the temperature, and the reason why is to interfere with reproduction of the invading pathogen. All right. And if we haven't used those terms yet, a pathogen is something that can generate a pathology, a sickness. Um, so it's something that your body recognizes as, oh, that doesn't belong. We need to get rid of that. All right. So, um, hold on a second. Just had that, but we'll pause it this. So the innate system has the physical barriers or the general I attack anything that looks like it doesn't belong kind of defenses. The physical barriers are the skin and the mucous membranes. All right, and that includes the things that they secrete. So the skin and the mucous membranes are a physical barrier that keeps most microbes out. You might remember a lot of skin has keratin in it. Keratin is resistant to acids and bases, bacterial enzymes and toxins. It's tough. It's durable. That's why leather is strong. And mucosa has similar mechanical barriers. It may not have the same physical barriers, but very good chemical barrier. These will keep most microbes from getting into the body. So, what are some of the chemicals that are in these barriers? The skin is slightly acidic, and mucous membranes will also make acid. So we call this the acid mantle. A lot of bacteria just can't cross acidic, can't survive in acidic conditions, so they can't cross the skin or the mucous membrane. We also, in our saliva, in our mucus on our lungs, respiratory mucus, our tears, we have enzymes that will help destroy invading cells. Also true in the stomach. So there's an enzyme called lysozyme in your saliva, and lysozyme is an enzyme, you probably guessed that from the name, that lyses invading cells. Lysing is just a fancy way of saying to break the cell open. So it kills the cell by breaking it open. Enzymes in the stomach may kill many microbes. Totally true. The majority of the microbes in your body, if they encounter the stomach, they're dead because it's so acidic. But the thing is, there are a few things that can survive there. One of them is a potential health problem, big deal. I'm talking about the spirochetes, the spiral-shaped bacteria that live in your stomach. Hold on a second. Why can't I not think of that? H. pylori. I can't believe I didn't think of that off the top of my head. I stopped the recording to go get Google to check it, and I'm like, oh, it's H. pylori. And so now we had this little interruption that was absolutely unnecessary. Anyway, going back to where we were. Come on. Okay. So, yeah, like the enzymes in the stomach will kill most invading bacteria, but Helicobacter pylori is fine. It doesn't care. All right, other things that are part of those surface barriers, which of course is innate, part of the innate defenses. So we're still looking at surface barriers here. We have mucin. This is the thick, sticky mucus lining the digestive system and the respiratory system. This will trap microbes. Like you inhale air, but instead of the microbes getting down to your lung, they get stuck along the wall in the mucus. It's like flypaper. Now, there are also defensins, which are antimicrobial peptides. When we say peptide, what we're talking about is a chain of amino acids. Think of these as little itty bitty single chain proteins. And their job, these antimicrobial peptides, is to inhibit microbial growth. Fancy way of saying make it hard for bacteria to reproduce. The says other chemicals, lipids in sebum, dermicin in sweat are toxic to some bacteria. So that means your normal skin secretions could be helping to kill things that don't belong. All right. Okay, never mind that. Okay, so we have in the respiratory system, we were just doing mucin defense and other chemicals. We also have modifications in the respiratory system to stop pathogens. It says mucus-coated hairs in the nose that will trap inhaled particles. We will talk about this more because we're coming up very quickly on the respiratory system. But what they're talking about are hairs called vibrissa. You also, lining your trachea, you have a bunch of cilia. I usually, let me move this back. I usually do a make a little noise and show the cilia moving upward. But what they're doing is moving the dust and the bacteria captured in the mucus, moving them upwards towards the mouth. Why? Because then you can swallow them down into the stomach, and the stomach acid will kill the vast majority of invading pathogens, invading microbes. Obviously, the things like the Helicobacter pylori are going to survive if you have that, but most things are killed by stomach acid. So, swallow it down to the stomach is a good way to get rid of stuff. Um, these surface barriers in your skin and your mucosa, you could have nicks, shaving cuts, things, and if that's the case, you're going to have another way of protecting the deeper tissues. So, all right, let's move on. Okay, here is a table 21-1 that summarizes everything we've said on the last few slides. Know it, I will be making questions based on it. All right, your second line of defense, this is still part of the innate defenses. This is not adaptive stuff that is specific for a specific pathogen. Anyway, the innate system is what comes into play if the microorganisms get past the physical barriers. So if they get past the skin, if they get past the mucosa. And the innate system has phagocytes, it's right in the name, big, giant eater. It has natural killer cells. We talked about that before, how they can tell another cell to kill itself. And okay, yeah. So natural killer cells, we're going to talk about them. They ramp up other cells, activate other cells, make them do what they need to, including could be telling them to kill themselves. Anyway, the inflammatory response. This is caused by macrophages, mast cells, white blood cells, anti-inflammatory chemicals. I'm going to give you one. The most famous one would be histamines. All right. So the inflammatory response, we'll talk about that later, but you're going to have the vessels get more permeable. You're going to have a lot more fluid leak out. You're going to have a lot more blood going to the area. Makes it easier to have white blood cells go to the area. Antimicrobial proteins, interferons, and complement proteins. I love talking about complement proteins. They are like the stealth attack. They sneak up on things in the body, and they're thin and shallow, so they can do their job well. What, thin and shallow? Okay. Hold on a second. Okay. So your second line of defense is the bacteria or whatever has already crossed the physical barriers, past the mucous membrane, past this again, it's in the body. What do? Well, we're still going to respond with innate defenses first, meaning not ones we developed to fight back custom for this bacteria. Well, that's adaptive. We'll get there eventually. And in innate defense, we got a couple types of cells, like neutrophils, the most common white blood cell, or macrophages. The name of that white blood cell means big eater, macrophage. Okay. If you're saying, I don't remember them, so like never lets monkeys eat bananas. The monocyte, those are babies. When they grow up, they become macrophages, the big eaters. Okay. So that's one defense. Natural killer cells that will try and, well, they do a lot of things, but if it's your own cells, they can tell them to die. Anyway, but we'll get into that. They go, those are modified lymphocytes, types of lymphocytes. They're moving through the body looking for stuff that needs to die. The inflammatory response, we'll go through all of that with the symptoms, but you have the more blood delivered to the area, which causes heat, which causes swelling, which causes pain. So all the symptoms are related to the fact that you're making the blood vessels more permeable and vasodilating them. Anyhow, we'll get there. And antimicrobial proteins, interferons, and complement proteins. Complement proteins are my favorite. I love them because it's such a cool idea. If there is it's almost like something straight out of sci-fi. Say there's a bacteria that needs to be attacked. You're going to have a bunch of little rod-shaped or C-shaped proteins that will go and embed themselves into the membrane of the bacteria, like right into it. They'll come and so sticks through the membrane, sticks through. Well, these things, they form a circle. Then they spread out, literally ripping a hole, making a donut-shaped channel through the membrane of the invading bacteria, and then water can rush in and fill the cell up till it pops, which is a cool. I mean, that's yeah. All right. So moving on. Many second line cells have pattern recognition receptors. They recognize and bind tightly to things on microbes. What we're talking about mostly are antibodies, antigens. Antigens on the surface of a cell. Those are molecules that are are used for recognition. Does this belong or does it not? But they also are handles that the second line defense cells can grab onto. Anyway, one class of these would be the toll-like receptors that can trigger immune responses. We have 11 different ones. All right, so let's go through these one at a time. The first thing on this list here was phagocytes, eating cells. That's what that means. Phago is to eat, and cyto is cell. So a phagocyte is a cell that eats stuff. And we're talking here about things like neutrophils, most common white blood cell. You can see right there, the two that I mentioned earlier, neutrophils and macrophages. These will attack, like, say you have bacteria in the body. If it finds them, it will pull them inside and eat them. That's how you get rid of the bacteria. You pull them inside. We have a diagram coming up that's going to show a picture, but you fuse them to a lysosome and spill out digestive enzymes and acid, and it's just like your stomach. It's acidic inside, has digestive enzymes. When we make the same types of conditions that we expose the bacteria to, we have the bacteria break down, just like your food breaks down in your stomach. So that's why I always call it lysosome, something like a little mobile floating around in the cell stomach. Anyway, so neutrophils, super common. That's why they're first on the scene, because they're the most common. They're not real good at fighting, though. They're going to die fighting. And whenever they're activated, they will become phagocytes. But macrophages are monocytes that grow up, and they are the big eaters. They're the best. They're the second cells that are going to come. You have free macrophages. Those are ones that are like a cop walking the beat. They literally are moving through the body looking for things that don't belong. Then you have fixed ones. That would be like a soldier posted at a checkpoint, checking to make sure everything that goes by is okay and what it should be. And some of those have specialized names. For instance, the ones in the brain we call microglia. The ones in the liver we call stellate macrophages. But they're white blood cells that will attack things that look like they don't belong. So, all right, we're going to have pretty pictures here of phagocytosis. My nose is killing me. Hold on. Okay. So phagocytosis means cells eating things. And this will happen when a phagocytic cell, we're talking like a neutrophilic, a macrophage, sees a pathogen, the pathogen surface, and finds a molecule there, an antigen, that will tell you that the thing is a possible pathogen, a thing that doesn't belong. Okay. And some microbes will have a capsule to like hide their surface so it's harder to see them. But the immune system makes these little hunter-seeker probe things, these antibodies. And antibodies are complement proteins. They can grab onto these surface molecules, these antigens. And when they do, the term there, opsonization, says the immune cell uses antibodies, complement proteins as opsons that coat pathogens. That's, I believe, a Greek-derived word, but what it means is to make tasty. Okay, so if a phagocyte is a white blood cell that eats things, opsonization makes them more likely to eat the thing, because more likely to eat the invading bacteria because it tastes better. Now those terms are based on just observation and a microscope of things happening. We now know what's happening. What's actually happening is that sometimes the antigens are small and hard to bind to and grab onto. But if an antibody, if a complement protein grabs onto the antigen, it's a bigger handle. The phagocyte, the white blood cell that eats things, can grab on more easily to the combination of the antigen plus the antibody, and it gives it a bigger thing to grab onto and pull that white blood cell, and pull that pathogen into the white blood cell so it can eat it. Anyway, but yeah, opsonization means to make tasty. All right, so moving on. Here we're going to go through it step by step. The phagocyte, that's our giant white blood cell here. It's in purple. It says phagocyte adheres to pathogens or debris using receptor molecules. All right, so there we have a bacteria that doesn't belong, and we have grabbed onto it. We are going to be pulling it into the cell. We grow our pseudopodia around it, and we pull it into the cell. And when you pull something in, when you phagocytize something, the little transport vesicle-looking thing that you create is called a phagosome because it was made from eating. All right, and that's out of order. Okay, here are the others. So let's go through a bulleted list. This is what happens. Yeah, okay, that they just have that one out of order. All right. Anyway, so we're going to grab onto and eat it. So cytoplasmic extensions called pseudopods, remember pseudopodia, bind to and engulf the particle in a vesicle called a phagosome. The phagosome is going to fuse with a lysosome. Remember, I described this as being like a mobile floating stomach. They're full of acid, they're full of digestive enzymes. And when they fuse and those are spilled out, we call it a phagolysosome. So phagosome plus lysosome, mobile stomach, come together, and then you have a phagolysosome. And it's whatever was inside that needed digesting plus all the acid and enzymes. It's all together. And then we'll get rid of the waste. So let's go through. The second one, we have a phagosome here. All right. Yeah, we've already talked about that. Then we're going to have the lysosome, the mobile stomach, full of the acids, full of digestive enzymes, fused to make a phagolysosome. And in there, the bacteria will be broken down by the digestive enzymes, by the acids, and anything that can be used will be kept, but a lot of it will just be waste that is excreted out. Okay, great. So we've got the idea. So some pathogens are not killed this way. It's hard to kill them. So they're resistant to the lysosomal enzymes, like tuberculosis. You might have to do something else. A helper T cell, remember that's a type of lymphocyte. We had our lymphocytes that were became immunocompetent in the thymus, the T cells. This is one of the types of T cells. A helper T cell can trigger the macrophage. It's like a general gives a command, you go and kill the thing. The macrophage then, instead of just eating, has some other weapons. It can do a respiratory burst, and that can kill things that it can't digest. That means it can release a bunch of free radicals. We're talking like things like oxygens. And oxygen, remember, is super reactive. It can release chemicals that oxidize. Hydrogen peroxide is another example. Hydrogen peroxide, what it is H2O2. You can see that there. Well, it's super unstable. It will break down almost instantly into H2O and a free oxygen. And that free oxygen is the free radical that is super reactive. It could also, around the cell, increase the pH and the osmolarity of the phagolysosome. So you can change what's going on, make it easier for the bacteria to die. We also have defensins that are part of another phagosome, the neutrophil, and the defensins into the membrane of the bacteria and rip a hole. When you do that, water rushes into the bacteria. It swells, it swells, it swells, it pops. Anyway, you also have non-phagocytic cells, large granular lymphocytes that are moving around. These would be the natural killer cells. Okay, natural killer cells have these granules that are full of chemicals that can kill. So, if your body recognizes a cancer cell and knows it's a cancer cell, your body will try to kill it. And natural killer cells are an example of how they would do it. Another example would be like a cytotoxic T cell. Anyway, so we're talking lymphocytes full of granules. They could either kill a virus-infected cell that you have before the viruses can grow and spread and go to other cells, or kill the cancer cell. Now remember, the cancer cell, the virus-infected cell, those are your cells, okay? And what they're doing is they're still looking for uh, self-recognition. And if there's what a natural killer cell does is, well, I don't see something that says it's foreign, but I don't see the things that say this cell belongs to us. It's one of us. And the reason why is as your cell mutates into the bad form or gets infected by the virus and then becomes the bad thing, it may stop making some of its own proteins. And if that happens, then the natural killer cell's like, oh, that needs to die. And they'll signal your cell to do apoptosis, to kill itself. Um, and they also, natural killer cells, will release chemicals that cause the inflammatory response, which we're about to talk about more, but I already told you, everything comes down to making the blood vessels more permeable. So we're delivering more blood, more fluid to the wound site. But let's move on. Oh, and here we are. We're going to do it. So inflammation is triggered when body tissues are injured. Injuries could be trauma, heat, irritating chemicals, infection. What are the benefits of inflammation? Well, you might say there are benefits, but actually the whole point, inflammation is part of your immune response. It's part of your immune system. It says prevents the spread of damaging agents, disposes of cell debris and pathogens, alerts the adaptive immune system, sets the stage for repair. So prevents the spread of damaging agents. Well, let's go through them all, but disposes of cell debris and pathogens, is going to wash them away with all the new blood. So here are the 4 signs of a really strong, intense inflammation going on. Redness, heat, swelling, pain. And I expect you to know those. 5th sign, impairment of function, which may or may not happen. It had to be pretty extreme for that to happen. But redness, heat, swelling, pain. This is all related to the fact that you're going to release chemicals that make the blood vessels more permeable. You are going to vasodilate them and make them more leaky. And what that does is it delivers a lot of fluid to the area. Well, if you're delivering a lot of blood to the area, then red blood, the area will look reddish. Okay. Heat. Well, if you're delivering a lot of blood to the area and there's a lot of metabolism going on during this fight with your immune cells, you're generating heat. But if you're delivering a lot of blood, a lot of white blood cells to the area, then it's swelling up with fluid. Remember, you made the blood vessels leaky, so it's easy for the white blood cells to cross the endothelial lining. Well, you have everything crossing, and because it's leaky, and so you're swelling with all the tissue. With all the fluid delivered to the tissue. That's edema. Pain, you're squeezing the cells. You're literally squeezing the cells. I'm sorry, the nerve cells, and so you got pain. Anyway, let's jump into it. So the stages of inflammation. Inflammatory chemicals are released. They cause vasodilation, cause the blood vessels to become more permeable. And then the third thing, we mobilize the phagocytes, the white blood cells that eat the stuff. All right, so inflammatory chemicals released into the extracellular fluid by the injured tissues. So you have a tissue outside of a blood vessel, but it has cells in it that are damaged, and they're going to release chemicals into, like histamines, into the extracellular fluid. This could be kinins, cytokines, prostaglandins, and my personal favorite chemical, the complement protein. I already told you it sticks a hole into the membrane, actually, a whole bunch of little proteins. I'm just going to show you the picture. It's so cool. We'll come back. God, this is long. Okay, there. So you have one that's sticking down here, but another one, another one, another one, another. And what you're making is this tube through the membrane. And as you do, all of the water is going to rush in, and the bacteria will swell, 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 pop like a balloon. All right, moving on. Okay. Did we do that? Yeah, we did that. Okay, there we are. And so we have confluent proteins. What are these things going to do? They're going to cause the vasodilation of the local arterioles. They're going to make the capillaries leaky so the stuff can cross easily. And they're going to attract a lot of the white blood cells that eat things. This is still talking about the non-adaptive immune system. All right. Here we have table 21.2. And I definitely want you to know what histamine does. I know that it is found in basophils and mast cells. Yeah, so on this table, it would be good to know them all. I will definitely ask a histamine question. I might ask one or two others. If I did, complements would probably be on the list because I like those things so much. They're so cool. All right, vasodilation causes hyperemia, congestion with blood, which causes redness and heat, because you've got lots of hot blood there. The increased capillary permeability causes exudate, meaning that you exude fluid. You have fluid leaking out of the blood vessels. Well, that's good because that fluid is full of clotting factors, full of antibodies, and it leaks into that extracellular fluid, that interstitial fluid, where you can do things with those chemicals, can do things to help. This can cause swelling or edema locally, and the swelling pushes on nerve endings, causing pain. All the stuff that we said before. All right, vasodilation. Pain can also result from toxins released from the bacteria or the prostaglandins and kinins. Is there ever anything good about edema? Yeah. When you have that surge of fluid, all that fluid rushing into the area, you can wash the debris from dying cells. You can wash the chemicals, nasty chemicals you wish weren't around, into the lymph vessels and pass them through the lymph nodes, where the more white blood cells can process and attack. Also, though, this benefit of edema, because you have everything rushing to that site, you can deliver yeah, it did. Okay, you can deliver the clotting proteins and the complement proteins to the area. Clotting factors will make a mesh They'll help you repair the area, and it also will trap some of the bacteria, holding them in place, slowing them down so that you can get more white blood cells to eat them. All right, you will mobilize phagocytes. Neutrophils hit the area first. That makes perfect sense since 70% of the white blood cells in a normal person under normal conditions are neutrophils. So neutrophils first, macrophages follow. Both of those are big eating cells. Obviously, the macrophages are the best at that. If the inflammation is due to pathogens, complement proteins are activated, and you will start on the adaptive immunity, which we haven't mentioned yet. That's building more. Oh, that's doing the responses that are they take longer, but they tend to be more powerful. And then we're going to go through steps for the mobilization of the phagocyte. The bacteria is, hold on.